All right, all right. It is Wednesday, 7 p.m., and you know what that means. It is time for the Secure the Bag Book Club. Welcome to the Secure the Bag Book Club. I am Brooke Brown. I am your facilitator. My purpose is not to present myself as an expert or a guru, but it is to show how knowledge can translate into real wealth building in real time. Each month, we meet to discuss a financial book that either relates to acquiring assets or managing your funds so that you can then free up more income to then invest with. And it is all for the purpose of growing and protecting your wealth. We've discussed two books so far. The first one was You Are an IP Company. And the second one was... almost dropped something. The Art of Buying Art. And both were fantastic reads, very enlightening. And I'm just so excited that we are talking about our third book, which is Taxes 101. Why taxes, right? Well, the idea is margin, right? You want to be able to have pay less in taxes so that you can then free up more income to then use on wealth building opportunities. Okay, so that is why we're talking about Taxes 101. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so also, just a quick housekeeping note. If you're watching live, the chat is open. I can't see who's participating unless you chat and you post in the chat. And if you're streaming later on, not live, then please leave comments as you're reading along. We would love to have you join in on the discussion. Okay, so I'm really connecting the dots. As I'm reading along in this chapter, currently we're on chapter 5 and 6, which were the two chapters. Let's see. Chapter 5 was money saving tax strategies, and chapter 6 was preparing your income taxes. I think that this is like this is the pivotal moment. This is why we came here, right? Is to learn about how to save money on our taxes and to not be afraid of getting in there and getting our hands dirty in the process of preparing them, okay? So remember, the author pointed out that there is a difference between evasion, which is illegal, tax evasion, it's illegal, and then tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal. It's using tax limiting strategies to then lower your tax bill. So that's what we're talking about. First thing I want to talk about is in the money saving tax strategies chapter, she does a good job of like line for line just saying, okay, this is where we're getting to, right? It's kind of like a funnel, right? Your taxes, the tax forms that you ultimately submit, it goes like a funnel, right? It starts with your gross income, right? It's all the inputs. It's your income from your W-2 job. It's your income from side hustles. It's your income from your investment portfolio. It's your income from your rental property. It's the sale of your mother's house and your estate, all those kinds of things, right? So you have at the beginning of the funnel, right, all the gross income that you put in, and then eventually you dwindle it down with above the line deductions, and then you get to the point where you're thinking about, should you take the standard deduction, or should I itemize my deductions, right? And then on it goes down some more, and it says, okay, now that we've gotten that, let's consider some tax credits, right? So you're ultimately reducing your bill dollar for dollar when you're using tax credits, because remember the difference between a deduction and a credit, which I did a video about this, a short. So if you go and watch that example on my page, What Brooke Spent, you will understand what I'm talking about when I say start with the deductions and then you get on down to the credits, right? So remember, the credit is what you want ultimately, right? Because it is a dollar for dollar deduction, or not deduction, but subtraction from your ultimate tax liability, your tax bill. Then, and so she points that out on page 124. So go ahead and take a look back at that part of the book if you're following along at home. Then she talks about things like tax advantage accounts. And then, oh my goodness, now we're getting to the part where we're talking about retirement savings and the advantages to doing one versus the other. She talked about Roth IRAs. She talked about 401ks and employer savings programs and all those kinds of things, right? Self-employed, I'm going to mess up the word, but it's a SEP IRA. And then she talked about investing, and some very valuable vocabulary came out of that chapter for me, at least. I don't know about you, but that's how I felt. For example, she talked about, let me find the exact words, right? So she talked about wash sales. Whoa, I can't pronounce that word. Wash sales. There we go. Tax loss harvesting, buy and hold strategy versus trading, and even more vocabulary such as tax efficient investing, such as municipal bonds, U.S. treasuries, all those kinds of things. Exchange traded funds. And so on this stream, I don't really want to go into the weeds of like which strategy works how, but if your interest is piqued, definitely check out the book if you haven't already started reading it. And if you are reading along and you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about, because there were some things when she was talking about tax loss harvesting, I was like, whoa, that seems advanced. But in reality, it's probably like super simple, and I'm just like overthinking it. Either way, go do your research, right? Because we're all about furthering our education, right? And then it talks about rental income strategies, and on it went. And I want to point out that those particular strategies that she was highlighting are because they are assets that if you have profits, if you have income from those, either the sale of those assets, or if you have income coming in from those assets, such as the case with rental properties, then you are going to be taxed on those either gains or losses or income, right? So you want to make sure that you're optimizing your tax strategy for that. You could go to a professional and talk to them and really figure out your plan of action and the ways that you can, move differently, so that at the end of the year, you're not looking at down the barrel of a large tax bill, or even like throughout the year if you pay quarterly. And then lastly, she gets into talking about then chapter 6 talked about preparation. And she talked a little bit about filing status, which there can be some strategies there if you're a married person, if you have dependents, including like older family members or children or foster children, adopted children, birth children, all those dependents, they count towards, certain tax credits and certain filing statuses. So you want to be mindful of that. There are certain advantages of filing, married filing separately versus married filing jointly. Again, you want to talk to a professional about that, but that is something that what I want you to understand is that this book right here, Taxes 101 by Michelle Kagan, is a companion to the process and to conversations that you will further have with a professional. But still do more research, right? And so that you can talk the talk when you're having these conversations, and you can ask those poignant questions that will help you become more confident in your strategy and more prepared when it's time to file your taxes. So of course, the preparation chapter talked about filing status, talked about forms, very explicit, right? She talked to the exact forms that you needed to use to file. She talked about adjusted gross income, which is a very important factor that you want to pay attention to. And I think she made an excellent case for why you should be paying attention to that number. And then she talked about some preparation software options. Now, again, I want to point out that this is not a straightforward, just blanket kind of advice, because everyone's tax picture is going to look different. So you want to be, again, involved in the process, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, I set, my exemptions through my employer, and that's all I did for the year as far as my taxes until it comes tax time, and I'm on TurboTax trying to, not an endorsement, by the way, trying to, navigate all these questions that they're asking, and why are they asking me about if I paid student loans? And why are they asking me about if I had equipment that my company owns, or all those things? Like, now, with this book, with the help of this book, you'll be able to navigate those questions and be like, proactively, what can I do so that I am a lot more engaged is the word I'm searching for. So yeah, those are the takeaways that I had from these last two chapters. We're going to go into the last section of the book, which is chapter 7 and I believe 8. Yes, chapter 7 and chapter 8. Chapter 7 talks about small business taxes, and chapter 8 talks about dealing with the IRS. I think more of us are going to be talking about the dealing with the IRS part, because I feel like people get very skittish, very scared about dealing with the IRS and what powers they have to come after you, if you will, right? But it's also important that we talk about small business taxes. Why? Because it's yet another asset that we want to eventually own. And so many of us own small businesses, whether we're, content creators and we don't have a brick and mortar, or we're, a baker with, equipment and a storefront to maintain and staff and all those kinds of things. So we're probably going to, I'm curious to know what she covers in that chapter. And I'm curious to see how it can definitely benefit us as members of the Secure the Bag Book Club. All right. So last but not least, oh, yes. So this is going to be a shorter video. One, I just wanted to make sure that we are covering the high level points of this particular section of the book. I didn't want to get too much into the weeds with the math of it all and everything, because again, the different strategies are going to apply to different people in different ways. And I didn't want to mess up and give you advice that was not sound. So there you go. But last thing is an announcement. We have a book selected for next month, January. It is called Invested, and it is by, so the full title is, let me pull it up. Invested: How Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger Taught Me to Master My Mind. Taught me to master my mind, my emotions, and my money with a little help from my dad. And it's by Danielle Town and Phil Town. So yeah, we're going to be talking about stocks, and it's going to be great. So that's January's book. I wanted to announce now so that you can get it through the mail. I know the holidays is a little challenging as far as the deliveries is concerned. So yeah, definitely want to encourage you to get that book. I will announce it again on the next video. And then the second announcement is that we will not be streaming next week. Christmas Eve, that is our next Wednesday. So technically, because we are a Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time stream, we usually would meet then, but instead we are going to meet on New Year's Eve instead. That one, originally the schedule that's on my website, whatbrooksbent.com/events, said that we were going to meet on the 24th. I decided that's probably not for the best in terms of participation. So we are going to meet on New Year's Eve instead, again, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys. So please leave a comment or leave, some positive feedback or anything like that. Would love to hear from you guys and love to know that this information is valuable to you and that this resource is changing your life for the better and changing your trajectory as far as wealth building is concerned. All right, everyone. I will see you on the next stream. Until then, make sure that you tell the others. Bye.